What do you do when it's winter? Do you put on a coat and maybe a hat and gloves? Do you wrap yourself in a blanket and stay in your warm house? What happens to animals when the weather gets colder? Animals don't have coats or blankets to keep them warm, but they must find other ways of staying warm during the winter. Grace the goose and Brian the bear live in the Canadian forest and love spending time together. But as the weather gets colder and the days get shorter, they have to say goodbye to each other in order to adapt to the changing of the season. In the end of November, Brian the bear says goodbye to Grace and goes into hibernation. Hibernation is when animals go into a deep sleep. Animals like bears and raccoons hibernate because they cannot survive in a very cold weather and there is no food for them. Brian prepares to hibernate by eating a lot and fattening up during the fall. When he is ready to hibernate, he finds a hollow tree or digs a hole beneath some rocks in order to create a place for himself to nap. The body fat he stored up during the fall allows him to stay alive, and because he is napping, he can use that energy for a while because he is not using the fat to do anything that requires a lot of energy. When he hibernates, his heart rate slows down. Sometimes his heart only beats a few times a minute. His body can become almost as cold as the temperature outside, and he breathes so slowly that it almost looks like he is dead. Grace does not hibernate. After Grace says goodbye to Brian, she joins her other geese friends as they prepare for their flight. Grace is getting ready for migration. Migration is when an animal moves to a warmer location to find better sources of food, water, or shelter. Geese and lots of other birds and fish use migration because they can travel quickly to a new location where they will be able to survive. Some animals store up fat and blubber to help them migrate thousands of miles, while others stop along the way to eat. The trip can be dangerous, so Grace travels in a large flock. They fly in a V-shaped formation and communicate to one another along the way in order to stay together. The leader of the flock switches off every once in a while because being in the front is very tiring and consumes the most energy. They are able to find their way using the sun, moon, and stars for direction. After a long journey, Grace makes it to Florida where the weather is warm and there is plenty of food. After several months of warm Florida sunshine, Grace is preparing to return back to Canada. She is excited to go home and see Brian and tell him all about her vacation in Florida. She wonders what he did while she was away. She and the other geese are going to use the same route and formation to get back home. Grace thinks they will fly even faster this time because they are all so excited and anxious to return to Canada. Just as Grace is flying home, Brian is waking up from his long winter nap. He is hungry and ready to see how life has changed since he entered his hideaway. He climbs out of the hole and wanders around, looking at all the baby buds and flowers that are about to bloom. He can tell that spring is arriving and he wonders when Grace will get back. As Grace is flying overhead, she sees Brian in the forest below. She swoops down to greet him. Brian is very excited to see her and is glad she made it home okay. She tells him all about Florida and Brian tells her about some amazing dreams he had during hibernation. They love sharing stories and are excited to spend time together. They know that the next couple of months will be great, but when winter comes around again, they will have to part once again.